So in the previous module, we spoke about psychological safety. What I'm going to share with you today is the trust equation. So it's all about building trust with your team members as a team leader. You can even take it further and see it as building trust as a team with your clients, or building trust with your peers or your husband, whatever the case might be. So it's the trust equation to show you perhaps where you are lacking in certain areas and where you are doing really great at. Now, what the trust equation looks like is this. So it says that trust equals credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-interest. Now you can imagine if someone shows up as credible, they show up as reliable, they have a connection with you, and they share not necessarily your deepest, darkest secrets, especially not with clients and amongst team members, but they do share connection and they do open up and show a little bit of vulnerability, the intimacy increases. Now with all those things present, you already start trusting them. However, if you are picking up, and this often happens in your gut, if you are picking up that someone is in this relationship for the benefit of them only, this trust starts to fade again. So the self-interest is, are you just in it for you, or are you really in it for a co-beneficial process, and are you making sure that the other person is also of interest to you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through all these four just to give you an idea of what does each mean. And then it's about a reflective process for you to identify where do you do great at and where can you perhaps improve. So first of all is credibility. Now you can see here that credibility is actually about the words that you speak. So I can trust that what you are saying to me is true. So I trust what you are saying. And the reason why I know that is because you are accurate, you know your facts, you have a logical way of thinking about things. I can know that you are a content expert. And with a content expert comes the fact that you love your topic. If I have to take you on as a service provider, or I have to trust your team to do something for me, and I pick up that you don't necessarily love your topic, that also hinders the credibility part for me. And then, of course, what also shows credibility is when you are speaking, I can hear whether you've done the research. I can hear whether you've done the homework. So this is just in a nutshell what credibility shows up as. Now you can imagine, if these things aren't there, credibility lacks, and then trust is affected. Then on the other side, or the next one, is you have reliability. And the reliability is really about your actions. And I know me personally, I have a big thing about this. If you've told me you're going to do something by a specific time, then do it. Because if you don't do it, you really break my trust. I know for some people, credibility might be hectic. For me, this is a very important part. It's probably my driver personality style that comes through. So with reliability, I can trust you to deliver and do what you say you are going to do. Or I can trust you to make sure that things run smoothly, even though I am not here, because I can rely on you to pick up where I left off. So the reliability is based on the amount of times that we engage. Your judgment of the reliability is really based on how many times you are engaging with someone. Because the more you engage and interact with someone, the more you start seeing how much you can rely on them or not. And every single time you experience the fact that you can rely on the person, you start building the trust of reliability. So you trust who you know well, and you start trusting repeated experiences. If your repeated experience is that the person does something, or that the person is saying something and they don't do it, then the trust starts lacking. Then on the intimacy part, I'm just going to cover the self-interest for now. On the intimacy part, it really is about emotions. Now, I know for some of you, you might roll your eyes. It's not, like I said in the beginning, it's not about showing your deepest, darkest secrets or sharing every single emotion that you're experiencing, but it's about connecting on an emotional level. So if you can build intimacy amongst your team members, amongst your executive team, with your clients, with your peers, with people that you are connected to, then you also show that you are comfortable to discuss certain topics. Now here comes the word in of vulnerability. Because if you want to create intimacy and the intimacy is non-existent at the moment, you will have to take the risk. so that the other person can see that you are willing to go there. And that's how it starts flourishing, or that's how the intimacy starts building. Is I often share very personal stuff with my clients, but I do it at a time that I know and I feel comfortable. And therefore, my client relationships with me is really very strong because we know a lot about one another. And yes, to a point, almost like selective transparency, but to a point where we both feel comfortable. So you have intimacy, which means you feel comfortable to discuss things. There's emotional closeness. And like I said earlier, you are taking risks with one another. And the more you know about the person and the more you almost can identify and understand what's going on for the person, together with reliability, together with credibility, you can imagine it's easy then to build trust. Now, the last part of the equation is the self-interest. If your self-interest is really high, that means you are focused on your own agenda. And I don't know about you, but for me, that's the first thing of, I'm not just sure if I trust this person because it's all about them. And what I get and what's in it for me is the most important part, not necessarily what is good for the team or what is good for the client. So I want you to reflect on yourself as a team leader. How much self-interest do you have in your team? And how much do you show? Is it all about your next promotion and your ability to grow a team and making sure that everything is done so that you can look good with the executive team? Or maybe you are an executive team and you want to look good with the founder or the investor of the business? Or is your self-interest low enough so that people can understand you are in it together with everyone and for everyone? Now, someone once asked me, right, so the self-interest should be zero. Absolutely not. You still need to feel that there's some value in it for you. So it's very, very important that you have some self-interest, but that it's not too much where your own self-interest goes over what is good for the other people. So if you count it out of a 10, I always say a self-interest of about 3 is quite good. There might be other people who have a different idea, but that is what I know works for me. My self-interest is more than that, I'm in the danger zone. So the trust equation links in with psychological safety. If you can create an environment of trust and be in that learning zone of high safety and high challenge, people trust you, they want to follow you, even if you challenge them. And if you take them to areas which is very uncomfortable, they are going to trust you to go there with you. If they don't trust you, they will probably feel like, hey, if I go there, I'm not going to be supported. So it all goes hand in hand. With psychological safety, you have to be vulnerable, you have to admit your own mistakes. And with trust, you have to be vulnerable within the intimacy. So I just quickly want to show you what it looks like when these things are lacking. So when credibility is not there, the person might appear as flaky. When there's no reliability, you might look like you are irresponsible. And when there's no intimacy, you might seem cold or distant. And then, of course, if there's too much self-interest, you are seen as devious. And for me, flaky, irresponsible, cold and distant, devious, definitely not a recipe for trust. So, what are you going to do as a team leader or a leader of a business to make sure that you can be trusted? Perhaps ask your team members, how much do they trust one another? How much do I trust my team members? So you as a team leader, how much do you trust your team members? And then how much does your team's external or internal clients trust the team? So you might have external clients and do a bit of a survey or just engage with someone within the client sphere that can give you that information. And if it's internal clients, at least you can ask about it inside the business. But once you have explained the trust equation to your team, these are also really good questions to have. How can we be more credible? What do we need to do or implement to be more reliable? So how can we show that people can trust us more on our delivery, that we do what we say we are going to do? And then ideas to increase intimacy. Maybe there's a few team members that struggle with the intimacy and others are really good at it. How can you compromise and how can you make sure that the others who are really good at it can teach the ones that are not so good at it how to do it gracefully and naturally? And then lastly, do we have a healthy and useful self-interest? or is it too high? Use it, play with it, reflect on it often. If you run team meetings, discuss it in your team meetings, especially on client projects. So enjoy it, have fun, and I'll see you for the next one.